Mamdani and comrades attempted to intercept a bankruptcy involving a New York City landlord with 90 buildings in New York that have over 5,000 rent stabilized units. It was the first thing he did on January 1st. He went and visited this landlord's properties to show the terrible conditions. And then they requested that the court allow them to intercept this to slow this bankruptcy down because the city of New York is a creditor of the landlords due to the fact that the city of New York had fined this landlord over $12 million for violations. And the federal judge said, no, that's a dub. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep going. So they failed to do that. And here's the thing. As of January 1st, what Mamdani needed to concern himself with is the fact that he automatically already became a slumlord. The biggest slumlord in New York, actually, the absolute worst slumlord in all of New York City. And that is because he is now the head of NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, okay, the projects. And so as someone with absolutely no experience in real estate, the first thing he should be doing is visiting NYCHA to show the deplorable conditions in NYCHA and to work on getting that taken care of. Clean out your house first. How's that? NYCHA, who, by the way, refuse to make their violations public. NYCHA, which HPD does not inspect unless it is court ordered. NYCHA refused to make their violations public on HPD Online, which is where all of the private properties, all of their violations, whenever a tenant calls 311, it automatically pops up on HPD Online. And then it shows you everything, whether there's litigation, if the city had to go in and make the repair themselves, all those things, right? And then unless a landlord is able to cure the violation on time, the violation remains there. So for some properties, you'll see violations that have been there forever. And that is because in order to get the city to clear the violation, you then have to pay them $350 to get them to do it, okay? So a lot of landlords are just like, no, I'm not going to do that. So they just leave it there, even though the violations are not valid. Mind you, you can renovate an entire apartment. You can renovate an apartment that has a violation on it. The city charges you for the permit. They inspect the property. They come in and inspect when there's a demolition, when, the electrical is placed in, the plumbing, everything. And they still will not clear the violation. You still have to pay HPD to come and clear the violations. And then when they come to visit your building, they'll find other things to give you violations on. So you have to make sure that absolutely everything, like if the paint is just slightly off color somewhere, they're going to give you a violation for that. I'm serious. So a lot of landlords would just rather not do it, and they leave violations up. So HPD Online is not even accurate when it comes to private properties. But NYCHA doesn't have to make their violations public. And they have about 600,000 something repair requests. And they refused to make it public even when they were court mandated, which, by the way, Mamdani was one of the people in the bill. There was like some kind of bill that was sponsored in order to force NYCHA to make the violations public. But ultimately, it only makes violations that are court ordered by HPD public after September 2025. So not even going back. Okay. So what he needs to be doing is concerning himself with getting acquainted with his own property, the property he's supposed to be managing right now. Listen, don't worry about it. This is not a real job. It's a piece of cake. It's so easy. So don't worry about it. It's just the people that have been managing NYCHA, they just were ignoring it completely. That's why it isn't getting done. But you're going to give it attention. You and your comrade, CO Weaver, you guys are going to get it done. You guys want to manage publicly owned housing? You have 177,569 apartments that you could concern yourselves with. Focus on that first. The first thing you need to be doing right now, actually, is focusing on the annual safety notice. Between January 1st and January 15th, you're supposed to send out notices to all of your tenants asking them if they have a child under 6, a child under 10, if they need stove knob covers, if they need window guards, if they need fire safety stickers. And then if they tell you they need that, if they actually respond, by the way, because most of the time the tenants don't respond. So if they actually respond, you have to go and do that. And when you're in their apartment, go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity, because a lot of times tenants are going to give you a really hard time about getting into their apartment, to the degree that sometimes you have to take them to court because they refuse to let you in, even after they've placed violations on the property, and even when they need repairs and they told you they need them. We're in that situation right now, taking people to court to fix problems in their apartment because they're refusing to let us in after they place violations on an apartment. So anyway, once you get in there, take advantage and check the door to make sure it's self-closing. Take a video of it, keep it in your records, and then make sure that the smoke and carbon alarm is functioning. Take a picture of the back of the alarm, get the manufacture date. You have to make sure it's a 10-year lithium battery alarm. And you have to go and put that in a calendar so that before it expires in 10 years, you're going to replace it. Even if it's hardwired, make sure that it has a 10-year lithium battery, because that's another thing. You're supposed to be keeping track of all of that, because that's another violation. And then go back to the notices, because you're going to have to send them out again if the tenants didn't respond the first time. By the 30th, you got to go send out another second round of notices, and do it by mail and by email, and if you can, by text message. And since you're planning on getting $800 million out of landlords and violations, I would suggest that you go and knock on people's doors if they don't answer. That's what I'm going to do this year, because people usually do not answer. And then if they still refuse, what you have to do is send a letter to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene reporting every single one of those tenants that didn't respond to that notice. And you have to get all of this done between January 1st and March 1st. So get to work. And while you're at it, check for mold and allergens when you're in the apartment too. Tenants have a tendency not to tell you that. And then when it becomes a massive problem, they're like, I told you, you're letting my apartment fall apart. I'm dealing with a tenant that claimed that they had a myriad of photo evidence that they had told me for years that they had mold in their apartment. And then it turned out they didn't send me anything. And I started looking through my old pictures, because this person has my personal cell phone number, my work email. They have, I believe, the landlord's personal cell phone number, 2 emails for the landlord. They have our plumber's cell phone numbers. They have 2 supers' cell phone numbers. And some way, somehow, they couldn't find any of that myriad of photos. And in fact, I found that we've inspected their apartment every single year, and not once was mold mentioned. So this tenant actually allowed mold to take over their bathroom and never said a word. And then they wanted to act like we were the problem. So good luck dealing with the tenants. Again, this is not a real job. Don't worry about it. You're going to love it. And get ready for rent registrations, by the way. And make sure you register the properties, and make sure that you do the bed book filing. That's another thing you have to get done. You have a lot on your plate. You got to learn real estate. Get to work, buddy.